Hello, listeners, and welcome to today's episode of Show Me Your Hustle. Today I'm sitting down with Chiko. Chiko, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ash. So I'm Chiko Chingaya, CEO of Talisman, and at Talisman we're building technology that essentially acts like a junior employee at an accounting firm. So handles a lot of the manual tasks and manual data entry, data upload, and kind of error checking that has to happen at an accounting firm for on the accountant's behalf. So high level, that's what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to jump in. So let's kick off with talking about your personal CEO hustle stack. So, what drives your knowledge for hustle? Books, podcasts, like what's out there for you?
I think everything. I think books, but probably, let's see. I would say books, and then I would say movies as well. Even music. Like I think there's a little bit like we all do different things, but I think for me, it's always watching people that are really good at stuff do the things. Like the other day, I was on TikTok watching a video of John Bellion, the musician, and it was this video. I've watched it probably a million times, but it's him in the studio with a bunch of people, and they're kind of riffing, and it's really interesting to watch him command the room and say, "Hey, okay, you over there,
Yeah.
like play this part that's kind of like this." So kind of watching him in his element and doing something at a high level is always super inspiring. So for me, it's of course, there's direct business examples, there's specific books,
Yeah.
but I think also being able to pull examples of greatness from other places always keeps things fresh.
Totally. Love that. What about your tech stack? Like, what is in your tool stack that you cannot live without?
Ooh, okay. Let's see. Slack is the obvious one. I think our some of our team is remote. We have partly in person, partly remote. So
Yeah.
I think having a really active Slack, because that's almost like the front door of your company, at least for us, where everybody
Right.
congregates. So that's something that we try to keep active because I think it's a good way for everybody to stay connected. So I'd say Slack. Superhuman is what I use for email. Used it for close to 2 years now.
Okay.
But it's awesome. Lots of different features that make it super ideal for a founder. And then let's see what else. I use ChatGPT on and off if I'm trying to like clean up certain things.
Yeah.
We used to use Linear, but now we use ClickUp because our CTO is more familiar with it. So that's where we keep a lot of our projects. And then Figma. I'm in Figma all the time,
Yeah.
working with the design team. So I would say add that in there, and then iMessage maybe. I'm
Yeah.
always well, I'm like a terrible texter, but like I try to keep up. I try to keep up with iMessage as much as I can.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
let's see. I'm trying to think high level. Those are the ones that like are very very obvious and top of mind to me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's dig in. So, how'd
Yeah.
you get here? What's your story on how you got to being a founder?
Yeah, so when I started in tech, I think I had a lot of really cool examples to look at. So, I was at Digital Tutors and then I was at Pluralsight. And through that, I was at both companies when they were hitting these really interesting inflection points of their growth. So I got
Yeah.
to see the journey from like beginning to almost end being going public. So I
Yeah.
had a lot of exposure, and through that, I was able to parlay that into other opportunities. Being at Pluralsight and then moving on to LinkedIn, and then after that, companies like Schmoop, and then product consultancy that I worked at after that. And I think having all of that exposure for me, I got to learn both the sales side of the house and the product side of the house. And I think that's what makes what we're doing with Talisman really unique, because we've got people that have an appreciation for all the different facets. Because you and
Yeah.
I both worked at companies where, I think the old joke used to be it's either like a product or like a product company, like an engineering company or a sales company in terms of what they
Yeah.
emphasize. And I think
Yeah.
for us, because of this understanding of all of those different facets that we have across our team, because I'm not the only one. We have like a product person that was a salesperson and went back to school to be an engineer. So I think that makes it really interesting. But overall, in terms of the story, it was the exposure that I got from all of those experiences and all of those companies. And then there was also the want to of wanting to do it with friends, build a company
Yeah.
from scratch and like make something real that's really, really good. Because you and I have both been in situations where you're selling something you don't believe in. But like, I always made a promise to myself, if we did start something, we'd make something good so
Yeah.
that we'd actually have fun selling it.
Totally. I hear that all the time as I sit down with CEOs. It's like, well, I was in corporate and I was here and I did believe in the product and then I didn't. And so now I'm going to do it myself. So it's so fun to watch
Exactly.
that. So as you're right now, what, a year and a half in? Is that correct? About
About 2 years.
2 years? Okay. Have you had a pivotal moment where you've been running in the wrong direction and you had to shift focus?
Yeah, yeah. I think we released our first product last year in February, and I was talking to my wife about this earlier, and one of the things we were nervous about was like, okay, is this like, are people going to like this, right? Whenever we were
Right.
doing like the release, like we knew we'd spoken to some people, but it was like, okay, are people going to like this? And once we released it, we recognized that like the product as it was going to need a lot of features added to it in order to make it competitive in the space that we were playing in. In terms
Right.
of competitive enough to be hyper growth, right? Because I think with a startup, especially if you're going for venture scale, the thing that you're looking for is like the path to getting to that place where it's like, wow, this is really growing and growing aggressively. Because really,
Right.
these aren't lifestyle businesses that, at least for us who have taken on venture funding, it's not a lifestyle business. It's like, hey, this thing needs to be some kind of rocket ship. And
Right.
I think what really helped was joining Brickyard, where I am now, and Matt and Cam are the two partners of Brickyard. And one of the things they challenged me on when I first came to visit them was thinking bigger. Because I think for me, a lot of it was like, I thought realistically. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's just get the business to like this realistic or do this realistic. And I think that there's, of course, a time and a place for that, and you should always be realistic. But
Right.
leaving that conversation with them, I was kind of like, you know what, they're right. Like, if you're going to do a startup, right, inherently you're taking on risk personally.
Yeah.
Your family's taking a risk, everybody's taking a risk. So to make that risk worth it at that level that you're taking the risk, you have to kind of
Yeah.
go for broke in a way. In your maybe not the
Yeah.
best, but yeah, go for broke and
Right.
build rockets in your own space. And so for us, when we took a look at what we were building, and we were like, do we feel like this is a rocket, right? And we felt like it was an incremental improvement, but not a rocket. And that's when
Yeah.
we started working on what is kind of now our new product that we've been building. And we started
Yeah.
that process in June of like, okay, let's run toward this because this feels like a rocket. It feels like a beyond exponential improvement on the way that people do this thing. So it's worth the time and the effort.
Got it. I want to circle back to risk.
Yeah.
So, talking a lot about risk in the startup, what do you see is your biggest risk with your business model right now?
I think the biggest risk is being able to deliver a product that hits the marks that it needs to for people to continue using it. So what I mean is like with AI, right? Or generally, I think when people are talking about AI, they're probably talking about like LLMs and stuff. But with
Right.
all of that stuff, there's a lot of promising, right? It's like earlier when you and I started this chat about the tool you use for
Yeah.
podcasting, you said, hey, it does this, this, and this, and you were very excited about those things. And I think for us, there are very particular things in our product that we're like, it does this, this, and this, and it needs to do those things smoothly, not just like do it, but like, because the way that I see it, right, is the best type of product that you want to work on is something that people's livelihood hinges on it, right? So if you think about like really, really good products or things that really take off and go crazy, it's like, okay, if this thing doesn't work well, like it really affects someone's livelihood, which is also
Right.
what makes it sticky.
Yeah.
So when we think about that in our space, this is accounting. So for them to adopt this into their workflow, it has to work as advertised, or it's not going to be worth the effort for them to adopt it. So that's something we
Yeah.
think about a lot. Is like, okay, it's not just that we're saying that it has these technologies. It also has to function up to the level of like being usable in a production environment where it's assisting them to make money. It's helping to serve their customers and doing so successfully.
Awesome. I I also want to touch on getting sticky a little bit. So I love that you already went there and talk about the importance of a startup, especially in your startup phase. Is you have to get sticky to get that rocket ship going because somebody's got to be your advocate. So with
Right.
that, how are you finding your market fit advocates?
Yeah, so this has been like a journey. We've done so many like weird and like random things. So we did all the
Yeah,
traditional, like I'm gonna sound like I'm like aging myself, but I'm like back in my day. But you used to be able to like send out a bunch of emails,
totally.
and like that would work on some level. And then you were able to like do the same thing on LinkedIn for a long time. But things have kind of shifted, and everybody's getting bombarded through email. Everybody's getting
Yeah,
bombarded like everywhere, and getting in front of people is more expensive than it ever has been. So for us,
right.
what we kind of saw was like, okay, how do we get past this like blocker of getting people's attention? So we were like, okay, what's our customer acquisition cost ideally, right? Like how much do we want people to
Yeah,
pay for this? And then what's the acquisition cost? And when we looked at it, we said, what if we just gave people that, right? Like what if we just like reached out to people and said, hey, we'll pay you an hour of your billable time to sit down with us and like talk to us about your problem. And it was kind of like
yeah,
a crazy idea because we were like, we don't know if that'll work. Like, but when we sent it out, people evaluated our offer more seriously because there was this kind of potential for them, like, oh, this looks interesting. Like, I could just get paid for my billable hours. But what's been fascinating is
right.
like, then people just started saying, no, 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 I don't want the money. I just want the thing that you're talking about. And what's interesting about that is because we started off by offering these billable hours, we got people to come into the
Interesting.
call and seriously talk to us. Like they would sit down with
Yeah,
us. We do a whole customer map of like what their existing process is from start to finish. And
yeah,
given that, we were able to like map like, okay, where are the different inflection points? Where are the problems? And they were super open to spending that time with us. And most of the time they would spend longer than the hour in the
right.
meeting, just going through everything. And through those early kind of people that we talked to, we were able to better discover what the actual customer problem was and map it out. And then update the messaging to the point that now we don't necessarily need to pay people to sit down with us. The messaging
Yeah,
resonates on its own, but we needed something to jumpstart us and to get in the room. And because at that time we didn't know what the message was, we didn't know what those like
right.
key needs and key features were. So
Yeah,
for us with acquisition, the billable hour thing worked well, and sometimes people's billable hours were really high, and we would just negotiate them down and say, hey, like, would you do it for like this price? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. And what we did do though is make sure to qualify those people. So we made sure that they were at a firm with at least the number of clients we were looking for. So, when they would respond, we'd say, hey,
right.
how large is the firm? What technologies do you use? All of that thing. And really, this was based on, I remember when I was at Pluralsight, they did an acquisition thing where they were giving away iPads at one point. I think it was like 2017 or something like that. But they were giving away like iPads for meetings and, getting these meetings, and then some of them were turning into deals as a result. And I think
Yeah,
it's been something similar for us. Like one of these very early initial people that did this, ended up, signing a contract with us. So I
right.
think it can work if done well.
So okay, so you have some acquisition, you're finding your market fit. Your next
Yeah.
phase is probably scalability. What's your plan for scaling?
Yeah, so our plan is to get it perfect for a very specific cohort. So we've got 5 firms that we're actively working with, and then we're saving basically 5 spots. So we've got people in our pipeline that we've
Interesting.
talked to, and they're interested in getting into it, but we don't want to focus on them yet. We want to
Okay.
make sure that for these 5, like the product works perfectly in a production environment. Because if it
Right.
works for them, it'll work for everybody else, and we don't want to spread ourselves thin initially. We want these people to have a great experience, and then it'll also help
Right.
our team stay focused. So our initial plan is basically to have this is essentially a closed beta in a way, and then we'll have an open beta where we'll add probably 15 more firms to it, and then go much wider than that. But to your point, I think the things around scalability that you have to be aware of, and I kind of learned this through my experiences too, is like the support aspect of things.
Right.
Is if I think we can grow by building a brand that is hyper personal. So, the reason why a lot of personalization doesn't happen at companies is because it's hard and it takes time, and there's probably other
Right.
things to be done. But I think one of the cornerstones of who we want to be is, when you reach out, you talk to a person,
Yeah.
and they help you out. And I think, us having potentially a higher price point than potential competitors for what we do will be fine because of that support aspect.
Totally.
So,
Okay.
when we think about scale, I think about like how do we scale up, making sure that if somebody reaches out, they receive that personal touch. Is like a really important thing to me as well. So
Right.
it's one, staffing, like making sure everybody's committed to that and willing to do that. And then processes, like being aware of when things are breaking, or when they're about to break so that you can redo the process or come up with a better one.
Love that. What, with that, when you talk about breaking and process change, what's been the hardest decision that you've had to make so far?
I think it's anytime you have to let someone go, because in the early days, it's a lot of like people that you probably like, that you're
Yeah.
working with or like you've got a close relationship with. But sometimes you reach
Right.
these inflection points where you have to go in a different direction for whatever reason. And it's very difficult to do. It's not like sometimes I'm like, I wish I was like a psychopath because I feel like that would be like way easier. You'd just be like, yeah, I don't care, get out of here.
Yeah.
But like you really feel it. You're like, dang man, I really like this person, and this
Yeah.
stinks, but it's what's best for the business. So I would say that is hands down been the most difficult type of decisions. All the other ones, if it makes sense, I always feel comfortable, but that one
Yeah.
is tough.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, especially in the startup, each person is so vital and their personality is part of the product and part of it. And so it's almost, there's a two-way let go. I mean, we talk a lot about one-way and two-way doors in all
Yeah.
decisions in the startup phase. And I'm like, I get it. Those ones
Oh
that
yeah.
walk behind you. So, okay, we're going to move to some rapid fire fun questions.
Cool.
What would your 8-year-old self think of your job today?
Maybe confused, probably. Like excited that it seems like it's good, but like confused, like why this?
Yeah, I love it. What's one prediction you have for your company by the end of this year?
Over 1 million in annual recurring revenue.
I love that. All right. What startup are you secretly admiring that you're watching grow alongside you?
Man, I'm a competitive dude, but I love when people are good because it gives me like a target. It's like, oh, I really
Yeah.
respect what they're doing over there. I think Linear is like the sickest company. Like I think that like the way that the founder runs the brand and the company and just in general like how it's set up, I think Linear is really dope.
You're like the third CEO that I've interviewed in the last month that has said that. So
Oh,
they
well,
have to be doing something right then.
they're crushing. Like I just really, you know what it is to me? It's like watching LeBron James and you're like a rookie in the league and you like watching
Right.
LeBron play and you're like, man, I gotta get up there like LeBron. That's how I
Oh,
feel when I watch Linear.
all right. Last question for you. If you weren't leading a startup, what would you be doing?
Working in product somewhere, but just like as a very annoying person, because I think like I'd eventually like get fired for like trying to do too much. But yeah, probably in product.
I'm like, is that a corporate problem? Because I'm like, there's never enough to do in a startup. Like, I was
Oh yeah.
updating YouTube videos today. I'm like, we got to take one for the team today. So,
Yeah. I feel like I have like an obsessive problem. It's like I like being obsessed with things that I like, and I like having like that, like, let's go get it. And that can sometimes be incongruent with how corporate works because
yeah,
it's a very structured thing. So, yeah, definitely fired probably, but working in product.
I love it. Well, Chico, thank you so much. I'm so excited to keep watching your rocket ship take off and can't wait to see what happens.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ash. Thanks for having me.